Everyone has a dragon. For some, it is loneliness. For others, failure, rejection, loss, the future. We spend years running from these things, believing that if we can avoid them long enough, we might finally find peace. But what if the things we fear the most are not trying to destroy us? What if they are trying to change us? Human beings are experts at avoidance. We avoid difficult conversations. We postpone our dreams. We distract ourselves from painful emotions. And sometimes, we become so skilled at escaping discomfort that we forget an uncomfortable truth. The obstacles that shape us are often the very ones we spend our lives trying to escape. More than a century ago, the poet Maria Rilke wrote, "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act, just once, with beauty and courage." At first the words seemed strange. What could fear possibly have to offer us? How could suffering hide anything beautiful? But perhaps Rilke understood something that many people spend their entire lives trying not to see. The dragons in our lives rarely breathe fire. They arrive quietly, as heartbreak, as uncertainty, as loneliness, as the terrifying realization that life is changing and there is nothing we can do to stop it. And because these experiences hurt, we assume they must be enemies. But what if we are wrong? Maybe courage is not the absence of fear. Maybe courage begins the moment we stop running. Because before we can understand why suffering changes people, we must answer an even deeper question. Why are human beings so afraid of the unknown? Long before cities, before phones, before modern life, our ancestors lived in a world filled with uncertainty. Beyond the safety of the fire lay darkness, predators, storms, hunger. To survive, human beings evolved to fear what they could not understand. The unknown was not an inconvenience. It was a matter of life and death. And so, the human mind learned a simple lesson. What is unfamiliar is dangerous. Thousands of years have passed, but our minds have changed far less than our world. The same instincts that once protected us from wild animals now react to different threats. A difficult conversation, a breakup, failure, the possibility of rejection. Our brains treat uncertainty as if it were danger itself. And because of this, many people choose what is familiar over what is meaningful. There is something tragic about the human desire for safety. We stay in places that no longer make us happy. We remain silent when we want to speak. We abandon dreams before they have a chance to fail. Not because we lack talent, not because we lack ambition, but because certainty feels safer than possibility. The dragon remains in the distance, not because it is impossible to face, but because we are afraid of what might happen if we do. Perhaps this is what Maria Rilke understood. Perhaps our fears are not obstacles placed in our path. Perhaps they are invitations. Invitations to become someone stronger, wiser, and more honest. But to understand that possibility, we must first confront an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the thing we fear most is not the world outside us, but the world within. We spend much of our lives believing that our greatest battles are waiting for us somewhere out there, in failure, in rejection, in loss. But according to the psychologist Carl Jung, the most difficult battle is not with the world, it is with ourselves. Because hidden beneath the person we show to others lies another side of us, a side we rarely dare to confront. Jung called this hidden part of the mind the shadow. The shadow is made of everything we try to bury. Our fears, our anger, our jealousy, our regrets, the dreams we abandoned, the truths we avoid. It is the version of ourselves we hide because we fear that others, and perhaps even we ourselves, will not accept it. And perhaps this is why silence feels so uncomfortable, why we distract ourselves, why we fill every empty moment with noise. Because in stillness, the dragons begin to appear, not as monsters with sharp teeth and fire, but as uncomfortable questions. Who could you have become? What are you afraid to admit? What parts of yourself have you left behind? Rainer Maria Rilke meant when he wrote, "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act, just once, with beauty and courage." Maybe the dragon was never meant to destroy us. Maybe it has been waiting all along, waiting for us to stop running, to turn around, and to finally look it in the eye. There comes a moment in every life when running is no longer possible. A conversation that cannot be postponed. A loss that cannot be undone. A fear that refuses to disappear. And sooner or later we realize something strange. The dragon we spent years avoiding has been walking beside us all along, waiting, not for perfection, not for strength, but for a single act of courage. We often imagine courage as something heroic, a grand victory, an extraordinary achievement, but most of the time, courage looks much smaller. It is admitting that you are afraid. It is allowing yourself to fail. It is choosing honesty over approval. It is facing the parts of yourself you hoped would remain hidden forever. Because courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else matters more. Rainer Maria Rilke understood that suffering is not always an enemy, that heartbreak can deepen us, that loneliness can teach us, that uncertainty can transform us. And perhaps the dragons in our lives were never meant to be defeated. Perhaps they were meant to change us into someone we could not have become otherwise. One day, each of us will meet a dragon, not in a distant land, but in the quiet moments of our own lives, in grief, in failure, in loneliness, in the unknown. And when that moment comes, perhaps the question is not whether we are brave enough to destroy it. Perhaps the question is whether we are brave enough to understand it, because maybe, just maybe, the things we fear the most are only waiting for us to act, just once, with beauty and courage.